Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael Collazo and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Collazo, here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, my friend?
It's going great. Loving this fall weather. It's getting colder. I don't know about everyone else out there liking it, but it's one of the seasons that I'm enjoying, and work's been great too. So I can't complain over here. So what about you, Raphael?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the cold, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I lived in a tropical oasis for several years in Puerto Rico, and that was great. But now it's getting really cold, and you know, my energy bill doesn't like it either, which is always great to have to deal with that during the winter months. But unlike the weather outside, we actually had a very engaging and vibrant conversation with our next guest, Mark Cypert. He was actually my CCIM 102 instructor, and he's just an absolute rock star, wealth of knowledge. He's a partner in Middleton Partners, and he's a CCIM Institute instructor, and he's got a wealth of experience in the commercial real estate space, almost 40 years in the business. So really, I mean, we went through so many different topics during this podcast episode. We talked about what his logic was when he got into the commercial real estate business. We talked about his investment thesis and the variables he considers as he's looking at these new opportunities. And he invests all across the nation with multiple different property types, both office and he's done a little bit of everything in the commercial real estate space. We walked through one of his most recent acquisitions, which was an office property in Houston, Texas. And he was able to add value immediately upon closing on the property. And he shares exactly how he was able to do that. And then he talks about his affiliation with the CCIM Institute and how much of value he's gotten from that and some of the deals he was able to accomplish just through the network itself, and the knowledge that he gained through the Institute has allowed him to really have a lot of success within his commercial real estate investments. So really, I mean, I thought it was a phenomenally impressive, and he's obviously a phenomenally impressive individual, and he shared so many insights with our audience that I think they're going to gain a lot of value from. So Jeff, what do you think?
He's definitely a wise expert in the commercial real estate realm, and I gained a lot of value. He was definitely a value add guest for us, and I know that you listeners and viewers will definitely will gain a lot of value as well. So.
Yeah, I know. And regardless of what you are within the space, he's a full-time investor now. That's kind of all he does. But if you're a brokerage, a commercial real estate lawyer, really anyone within the commercial real estate space, I think you're going to gain a lot of value from this episode. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into the podcast. Well, hey, Mark, how's it going? Happy Friday.
Thank you, Raphael. Good to see you.
Yeah, no, it's great to see you. And for those of you guys who are tuning in, Mark actually was my CCIM 102 instructor recently. Phenomenal course. If you ever get a chance to take the CCIM curriculum, highly recommended. And I learned a ton from Mark, and he's just a wealth of knowledge and a very interesting guy. So I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to learn a little bit more about him and, just his career in commercial real estate. So welcome again.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mark.
Awesome. Well, what we usually do when we first get started with the podcast is we like to learn a little bit more about the person across the table from us. So if you don't mind, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I've had a pretty varied career, almost exclusively related to commercial real estate. I started out with an engineering degree. So I started out building buildings early in my career. And, it's having the knowledge of how to build a building is good knowledge to have. But to me, a more interesting question was not how to build a building, but why, when, and where to build a building. So over the years, I've transitioned my career to more on the investing, developing side of the business. And I've been doing it now for, almost 40 years. And, through a combination of asset management, acquisitions, development, and now doing independent investing, which I've been doing for a number of years.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think you meant just through your bio. I mean, it seems like you're also getting, like you said, a lot on the private side as well now, where you're creating your own portfolio of properties that you've been investing in for quite some time. So that's awesome.
So I invest with private equity investors, and I've got a variety of investor appetites that I invest with in joint ventures. They range really from core, which is more, predictable, long-term cash flow, good credit, but predictable yields, which is nice to have in your portfolio, especially during turbulent times, all the way to value add and opportunistic. And so we invest in different properties types, different markets, different asset classes, and so it's a diverse strategy, but it's something that I've been doing a good bit of my career and have experience doing. So it served me well over the years.
That's fun.
Yeah, it sounds like. You said, was it 40 years that you said that you've been in?
I started my career in 1982. So that
nice.
Makes me an old timer in this business, but I still have a lot of energy. So still going.
I would say expert and the man with the plan. I would say that instead of the old person. But what in 1982, what actually got you interested in commercial real estate?
Like I mentioned, I was interested in the building buildings early in my career, and so I got my degree in construction engineering and went to work in that field, and really have never looked back. So I've always been interested in creating things and in building things and in creating wealth, and and I over the years I've shifted my focus more to the finance investment side. Went back to school, got training in that, and then I've been involved, of course, in CCIM, where I met Raphael, and I've been teaching CCIM courses now for over 20 years as well, and I really love doing that and imparting knowledge, especially to young people in their career, for the next generation coming up. And my focus is mainly, what I love teaching is mostly the market cycle analysis, market supply and demand, forecasting, and trying to find good opportunities, and of course applying that in my business.
Yeah, no, and I'll speak to the course that I took with Mark. It's absolutely impressive, and not only that, but the tools that are available for individuals to really assess opportunities within a certain market are it's amazing. I mean, even Site to Do Business that we messed around with during the course. I mean, I've been messing around with it the last several weeks, and I remember I have a client that's outside of the state that is looking to invest in the market. He's looking for medical office investment property. And I used Site to Do Business, and I created all these graphs and, kind of gave him a visualization of what the market looked like in this particular area, the demographics, the, average income, et cetera, and then sent it over to him. And the response that I got from that was amazing. He's just like, wow, this is so cool. I didn't know you could actually do all this stuff. So, it is a phenomenal course to look at. So, one thing I wanted to ask you, which is very interesting, is pertaining to your investment strategy. So what's your investment thesis, and what variables do you analyze when you're looking at opportunities? Because you said you do have a range of different property types you invest in.
Sure. So anytime you look at an investment, and of course, and I'll have to say Raphael was an incredible student. That's why I keep coming back. It's the drug that keeps you coming back, to have students that are very engaged and use this stuff. And I'm glad to hear you're continuing that. But as you may recall from class, Raphael, without making this a review of the class, but there's different tests of feasibility when you analyze a market. It all ultimately lives or dies on financial feasibility. Can you make money based on your investment strategy and the risks involved? But it's much more than that. It's the overall market analysis, feasibility. Where you're getting into market cycles and supply demand fundamentals and making forecasts about that. It's obviously about the site and location feasibility and how your property compares with competitive properties and how it will be viewed in the future. And then, of course, there's things like legal and political, which sometimes are often overlooked but are very important. And it all ties back together. So there's no one answer, but I think as far as the thesis goes, making sure you've checked all the feasibility boxes, you understand everything you can about the potential for that investment, and then you make your money on the buy side. It's a smart guy once told me it's easier to buy it cheap than it is to sell it expensive. So, it's all about, making the best decision and buying your property right. And then, how long do you hold it? And making the appropriate hold versus sell decision to redeploy.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And again, you have so many tools at your disposal. I mean, I remember in class you shared a reference point that, what was the gentleman's name that does the market analysis for the different markets and tells you what point in the cycle these types of properties are based on all the metrics that he's analyzing. What was that gentleman's name?
Glenn Miller. It's spelled Mueller. He's at the University of Denver. He's got some incredible data. And if your viewers of the podcast want to go check that out, just Google Glenn Mueller, Mueller, market cycles, and he's got a ton of information. He updates it quarterly for the major markets in the United States and the major property types. And he's the go-to source for market cycles. And as you know, timing's everything. So I would recommend that.
100%. Yeah. And it at least gives you an idea of where a potential opportunity could be in these different markets. And then obviously, once you start getting more granular within that market, they're like we analyzed in class, it's like there's certain areas of town that are going to impact whether or not an opportunity is beneficial or not, based on what your property type is, based on, your expected hold time, all these different variables that come into play when you're looking at these opportunities. So, like you mentioned, there's so many variables to consider, but you really, like you said, the buy side is really where you can make your money. So,
yeah, and most definitely. And from a macro standpoint, obviously there's better times to buy or be a buyer, better times to be a seller, better times to hold. But in any market cycle, there are opportunities if you know how to search for them.
Definitely.
And that's really our goal on the CCIM Institute, is teaching how to uncover those opportunities and analyze them.
That actually kind of takes me to one of these other questions that we had can you enlighten us on some of the challenges that you faced on one of your investments? I mean, you can just pick one, it don't have to be many, but
there's so many, but the biggest challenges are capital markets and market cycles don't always line up well with economic cycles. And then, of course, you have individual challenges at the property level and the tenant level. And, an economist would call it an exogenous shock. That means it's unpredictable, right? It's the pandemic is a great example of that. I'm pretty heavy in office, and the pandemic has not been kind to office investment, certain types of retail investment. However, it's been a boon to industrial and multifamily, and it's been terrible for hotels. So it depends on where you're invested and what property types and what locations. But, you can't always predict the future. It's full of uncertainties. It always will be. And even, what you think are bulletproof investments with great tenants, things happen. So, I would just say, diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Partner with other people's money. Diversify your holdings yourself, and just make smart decisions. But I can give you numerous examples, but I guess that's probably the most recent one is the challenges of unpredictability, as we've seen.
Definitely. Yeah. And you mentioned the capital markets, like you said. I mean, just because an opportunity is presented to you that could be a good opportunity, if you can't find the financing for it, in particular, it's some of these larger, these properties that you're dealing with, which are tens of millions of dollars. I mean, I'm sure there's some challenges involved with, securing the capital to be able to acquire some of these large acquisitions. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, most everything I'm invested in is in joint ventures, where I'm on the general partnership side. Well, your LPs, your limited partners, are generally your large investors, and you have to, of course, line up with their expectations and their investment returns, and they ultimately drive decisions. But team up with you and your general partnership team to create that value, to unlock that value. And so, for sure, capital markets, the debt markets don't always line up with opportunities you may see. So that presents other challenges as well.
Sure. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about, which you kind of shared during the class that I took, was one of your most recent acquisitions, which was, I believe, in Houston.
Yeah.
You were mentioning it was a obviously multi-story office building, and you were going to do some sort of restaurant concept in the bottom, and then incorporate office and luxury condos. Could you mind talking a little bit about that and seeing? Because I'm interested to see how you're going to be able to convert what it currently is into something that could be of benefit to your investors and really everyone who's utilizing that space.
Sure. So there's actually two different deals. The one with the luxury condos was a Dallas deal that we bought several years ago. Redevelopment. It was in a foreclosure. It was a great investment. The one in Houston, most recently that we purchased this summer, was with a large institutional partner. It was a multi-story office building, very well located. We were able to buy it. It was underperforming. We bought it at a very favorable basis, and the way we created value there is the day we closed, we had pre-negotiated a multi-floor lease with a large regional high credit accounting financial services firm that I sourced that relationship through my CCI network. We gave them some ownership interest in the property to make that deal happen, but we increased our occupancy the day we closed by 10%. It was an underperforming property. It's still a value add. We still have work to do. But we also, more importantly, increased our net operating income by and resulting value by about 20%. And so we made money the day we closed. That's what I mean by making money on the buy side. We still have a lot of work to do. There's still a fair amount of lease up yet to do, but the market's starting to pick up. You pick your markets and your sub-markets based upon where they are in the cycle. Houston is a huge market, but it's been impacted by lower energy prices. It's an energy capital, but it is starting to rebound. It's more diverse than it used to be. It's a great property. It's well located. It needs some renovation, and we've teamed up with this institutional partner to put a lot of capital back into the property to modernize it, bring in food service, other amenities. So it's still a work in progress. Been working pretty hard on that one, but that's just a recent example of finding these diamonds in the rough and creating opportunities.
Sure. And I remember you sharing the infographic regarding the cycle at which office was for Houston, and I believe that when you showed it, it was still in the before the peak. It was still you still had opportunity. I'm sorry.
Early recovery, which is when you want to really buy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And timing is everything. And going back to Dr. Miller's graphs that we were talking about earlier, he's a great resource for where are property types by market, where are they positioned in that cycle, and that really sets your strategy not only on the buy side or development side, but on do I hold it, do I sell it, what's my strategy on leasing? Everything is based on timing in the market. So definitely great information to lean on when you're making these decisions.
Yeah, I can only agree on that. So earlier you were speaking of like partnerships and going in on a deal, and but I was wanting to ask like affiliations. I know you're part of the CCIM, and so how has that helped you throughout your career?
It's been phenomenal for me. When I was a CCIM student, it was it was an eye-opening experience for me, particularly, and I already had a background on running the numbers and discounted cash flow analysis and calculating returns because I'd been doing that for a number of years. But the biggest eye-opening to me was the class that Raphael took, which was the market analysis. And I learned some forecasting techniques to forecast job growth and forecast population growth and what that means for future demand. And for me, that was the most valuable takeaway. And I honestly could not wait to get out of class and start using it. And I can honestly tell you, I've been using it ever since. And that was 30 years ago. So if you really learn this information, this is what helps you make money in this business and sets you apart. And it's not only that, but it's the technology tools that Raphael mentioned earlier, which are incredible and are expanding, as well as networking opportunities. Historically, some of the best deals I've done and the best value I've created for myself and my investors are networking through that CCIM network. And if I've got a a property in a market I'm not that familiar with, I know I can find the right connection through that network to help unlock those values and underwrite a deal and ultimately make money.
Oh, and I'll speak to that as well. I mean, I don't come from a finance background. I never really had any type of formalized education regarding finance. I was an engineer by trade, got into software. But, the classes themselves, like you said, are really phenomenal classes, all the way from 101 to 104. Even the negotiations class that I took was really helpful. I've never really been in a sales role, and negotiation wasn't something that wasn't significantly part of my, curriculum or anything like that. And as an engineer, so I found that extremely valuable. And I think, like you said, with CCIM, it's a caliber of individual. Like all the people that I've met through the institute that have been in CCIMs for quite some time. They're just a different caliber of individuals. So I think that network, like you said, I'm excited for it. I'm going to work to sit on for my CCIM pin this coming year. So excited to get that underway. So you mentioned earlier, one of your primary focus areas is really office. And right now, as you mentioned, during COVID, there has been somewhat of a negative sentiment towards office. Although some is warranted, I also think some of it's overblown. But I just kind of wanted to talk to you about it, since this is something you do on a regular basis. How do you see the office market evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
This has been the biggest game changer in office in my entire career. Where it's going to head is still an open question, obviously, but I see office market demand. Well, a couple things working there. I see increased demand for what we consider to be office use and employment, and that's the way our economy is evolving. I see increased demand for the STEM jobs, the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and all the related financial functions and business services functions. Those tend to be office using jobs. Now, whether those jobs work in an office, with other people, or work from home in your own office and you telecommute, that is the biggest, remaining question. And I do think my best guess is we'll be in some sort of hybrid model for the foreseeable future. In my own properties, there was a push for majority of companies to go back to work in the office, majority of the work in the office by Labor Day. Well, I think that the Delta variant has pushed that back now to early next year. I think, many workers are saying, look, if I can't telecommute in, I'll go get another job. And it's very competitive out there to find bright, talented people. But on the other hand, especially for younger people in their careers that are office using, there's something to be said about collaboration, training, corporate culture, mentoring, career advancement. It's hard to really do that 100% from home, if you know what I'm saying. So 100%. I do think there's probably some hybrid future. I think on the plus side, more office using type of jobs. On the unknown side, how many days a week will people work from home? I think a reasonable assumption is, people working from home on average 2-3 days a week, going in and collaborating, meetings, training, what have you. Yeah, I think that will tend to wane over time, but we've got the technology now, just like we're having this conversation, right? Technology is advanced to the point that you can be very productive from home, and there's a lot of benefit from not having to get your car and drive 20, 30, 40-minute commute every day, each way. So,
oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, that's
hybrid.
Yeah, and that's a huge selling point for a lot of people, is that people have lives outside of work, and so if you have the ability to be able to work from home and still get a job done, but also have the ability to do other things within your personal life, that helps a lot too. But I do agree with you. I was at a conference in New York City about a month and a half ago. It's called the Commercial Real Estate Technology Conference, or CRE Tech Conference. And one of the biggest topics at that conference was how is office or getting back to work, because they had the JLLs, you had the Cushmans, you had a lot of these large commercial real estate firms and private equity firms that were talking about this, and how are they going to accommodate the future work scenario. And so one of the biggest things that they mentioned was, in very high competitive corporate culture environments, individuals are the career advancement piece is a huge part of it, because if you're at home all the time and you're another associate within your office is having FaceTime, they're showcasing their leadership ability. There's a difference in what the career advancement opportunity is for someone who's at home all the time that's not really being able to showcase that in front of the leadership versus someone who's actually physically there on a regular basis. And so, they were talking about that piece and how that's likely going to manifest in people saying, okay, well, in order for me to advance in my career, in particular, if you're an ambitious individual, you're almost going to have to be in FaceTime within the office. And obviously that's a corporate. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I totally agree with that. And, in humans need human interaction. Mm-hmm. It's been great for the introverts, but most people in this business are extroverts, right? We're used to being around other people, and there's something missing. I mean, even having this conversation, teaching a class, I much prefer eyeball to eyeball teaching as opposed to online. There's just something missing there. Even though we can communicate, we can exchange ideas, there's just something missing with that personal touch. And I do think we crave that as humans. And I think there will be a tendency to, once the pandemic is cleared and it's in the rearview mirror, I think there will be a tendency to have more human interaction, which maybe it's not 5 days a week in the office, but maybe it's 3 or 4.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll see. It'll manifest itself in several years, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And in particular, when you're talking about the human to human contact, like trust in doing business, like, I don't know. I'd much rather be able to shake someone's hand to do business than, do everything via Zoom and then, you just never meet the individual. But that's just me. Maybe there's someone out there that much prefers to not even have a physical interaction with someone. But
Mark, and there's 2 things that I took from what you were saying is, one is no more sick days, right? So,
That's true.
Yeah, you can work from home. It's like, but the main one that I wanted to point out, and you guys kept touching on it, is atmosphere. Just the feeling of being around, a group of people. There's something to say about that. There's a lot actually. To when the collaboration, you're sitting around a table. There's something you're looking at everyone, and the excitement builds and stuff. But it's kind of hard to do that through a screen, a 2D object. And so exactly. I can definitely see that. And, but that kind of leads me into another question here is, what advice would you give someone like me or someone out here who's listening to this, who wants to get into the commercial real estate career?
Number one, keep yourself sharp. Don't, even if you've got your MBA, you never stop learning. Learning is a lifelong process. So look for ways to increase your knowledge base, increase your experience, your exposure, no matter what. I know we've talked a lot about CCIM. There are plenty of options out there, where you can go about doing that. So I would say keep yourself current, keep your brain functioning. We're always constantly striving, learning new things. I would say do what you love. Where work does not become a job, it becomes your passion, where you look forward to waking up every morning and doing what you truly love. And that, commercial real estate is such a diverse business. There's something for everyone, if you just know where to find it. Find a good mentor to work with, find a good company that offers, incredible training and career advancement. And I think most importantly, as you look for opportunities, try to find a way to own a piece of your business, equity ownership. Many people in the business are transactional based, and commissions, fees, whatnot. Those are great. They help pay the bills, but it's hard to create wealth unless you have an equity position in what you're working on. So use your knowledge, your expertise, your talent, teaming up with other people's money that believe in what you're doing and what you can provide, and get a piece of that equity ownership and continue to build on it and diversify. That's if I were going to advise someone early in their career, that's been the biggest difference for me personally, is just find a way to own a piece of the business, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and I'll even speak to that, meaning that, you become a better advisor too, because you understand the owner's perspective at that point. I can't tell you. I don't own a ton of property. I own a 4-unit property here in Louisville. It's an old Louisville property that I lived in one of the apartments, rented out the other 3, lived there for about a year and a half. And then now we just bought a house in a submarket here called Jeffersontown. So I own that multifamily property, but I can't tell you how many times that I've been dealing with a client that is just asking me about certain things. And I said, well, in this situation, this is what I did. This is how I'm handling this particular, scenario that's similar to what you're facing right now. And that has a different ring to it. And not only, so that essentially, you become that trusted advisor, because now it's like, oh, he gets what he or she gets what I'm going through. So having that owner's perspective is really valuable, both on the career side, if you're in the brokerage or as a lawyer, whatever function you are within the commercial real estate space, it makes a huge difference.
Many people ask, well, how can I really get into investing? I don't have the equity to put, I can barely pay my bills. How can I put money aside to put into a business? Get creative. There's such thing as sweat equity, right? You contribute your time, talent, labor. And part of that goes towards, creating wealth for yourself and your client. There's many ways to do that, and try to find those opportunities and position your career towards doing that. And over time, it will create wealth if you're smart about it and willing to work hard. It's not easy, but nothing is easy, right? That's worthwhile.
Yeah, but exactly. And anything worth pursuing in life isn't easy.
That's true.
That's the thing. So, all right. So, first off, thank you so much for sharing your time, Mark. I know you're a super busy guy, and you're really doing a lot of cool stuff in the commercial real estate space. One question we like to ask near the end of the episode is that what was the most impactful book you've ever read? And it doesn't necessarily have to be commercial real estate related. The most impactful book I read when I first started, my personal development journey was The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. It was a completely unrelated topic, but that's kind of what clicked in my head. And now it's like, that's what I've been able to do. All the things that I've been able to do thus far is because of that book. So I was wondering if maybe you had a book that you'd like to share that had a similar effect to you.
As far as business related or investing related, I can offer two suggestions. The first is more kind of a beginner starter, Millionaire Next Door. I forgot who wrote that book. It's a great book, and it really, it's based on, our society. When you see the person driving the $100,000 automobile, wearing the Rolex watch and living in the mansion, a lot of that is smoke and mirrors. They're leveraged up to their eyeballs. They really haven't created wealth, right, on balance sheet wealth. And they're one disaster away from bankruptcy. Versus true wealth creation and budgeting and spending your money wisely. I would recommend Millionaire Next Door to any teenager in the business, maybe high schooler, certainly college age going forward. That's a very impactful book. Related to what we're talking about and what I teach, and I think I've mentioned this book in our class, Raphael. It's called The New Geography of Jobs. Fascinating book. It's basically a pretty interesting examination of why certain market areas grow faster than others, why some are expanding and why others are in decline. And very sensible book. I believe that's Enrico Moretti is the author of that one. I would highly recommend that book as well if you're interested in what we've been talking about as far as commercial real estate markets and trying to understand more about them. Those are a couple.
Yeah, I have not read. I've read The Millionaire Next Door. I've not read the other one, and I'll be putting that on my my list, especially because you're right. The future any book that talks about the future of the economy, in my opinion, is a great book to read. At least get some perspective. You may have a different interpretation of how that the future is going to look, but when you start taking in different data points from people, that in particular those who are actually actively in trying to interpret what's going to happen in the future is of benefit. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I can think of one more, and this is a fun read for those listeners of yours that are in the retail or shopping, or you don't even have to be in that business. It's called Why We Buy, and the guy that wrote that is called Paco Underhill. It's a fascinating book, and it's extraordinarily interesting on just common sense things about increasing sales And there's all kind of examples he goes through. And it's a fun book to read. So I would read that one too. Why We Buy by Paco Underhill. It's a good one.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing those ones.
Yeah. Mark, I want to say we appreciate you coming on, all the knowledge and expertise and years and experience that you enlighten us with. We really appreciate it. To give back to our listeners and everyone, viewers that will be watching on YouTube, we have a CRE treasure chest, which is a repository of things that we like to give out to our listeners and viewers. Is there something that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, so I sent to Raphael this morning something we've just developed at the CCIM Institute. I'm on the CCIM Tech Board, and I've contributed materials to that. We've got some great new tools on our dashboard that will be available not only to CCIMs, but anybody in the business. And we've developed what's called the Commercial Real Estate Performance Index. The abbreviation is CREPI. We've branded that. And as I explained it to Raphael before the podcast started, it's a series of 10 economic indicators that are fairly diverse. They chart back to the fourth quarter of 2019. We tied that, all of these indicators to an index of 100, and then and then we backtested it for the last 20 years. So we've gone through 3 economic recessions and expansions, and it's highly predictive of future changes in commercial real estate, overall commercial real estate investing. So check that out. I've given Raphael an example, so I guess you guys can put it in your, what do you call it, your treasure chest?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And for those who want to find it starting first quarter of next year, just go to stdb.com, stands for site-to-do-business.com. You'll find it on the dashboard. It'll be free of charge and available to anyone that wants to check it out. The goal is to be the go-to source for forecasting future changes in the commercial real estate performance index. So I think that would be a good contribution for your followers.
Yeah, that's a macro level. Just so you guys know, it's for the commercial real estate market. Exactly. That's awesome. Yeah. And it's a very interesting, I saw the sheet. So if you guys do get a chance to download it and look at it, definitely do so. And going forward, we were talking prior to the podcast that they're going to be accessing several APIs to be able to make sure that this updates on a very regular basis. Because I think initially it's going to be quarterly, and at a certain point, once you do gain access to those different APIs, it eventually will be potentially monthly. But
yes,
that's awesome. Well, cool, Mark. Well, thank you again so much for stopping by. We really do appreciate all your time. If someone wanted to learn more about, what you do on a regular basis, or, potentially take one of your classes at the CCIM Institute, what's the best way to be able to get in contact?
So I've got a number of emails. Probably the easiest one to remember is M Cypert, that's MCYPERT 1@gmail.com. That's a good one to use. Mm-hmm. My office number, feel free to call me, 214-420-3165. And then the course I can recommend for both of you guys included, Raphael, is my advanced market analysis class. And that's through the Ward Center, WARD. So if you go to ccim.com, find the Ward Center for Continuing Real Estate Studies, look for the advanced market analysis course. I teach it in person and I teach it online. And so check that out. The next one coming up is probably in the spring, but it's an 8-hour, pretty intense course. Online, it's done in 4 2-hour sessions, usually in the evenings. So many students have found that to be helpful, and it goes with what we've been talking about today, a lot of the topics we've been talking about today, with great tools, and it's case study driven. So check it out.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely be checking it out. I've been telling Jeff that he needs to be taking some of these courses as well. So
Jeff, we need to see you in those courses, buddy.
Yeah, I know. Definitely need to start 101 for sure.
Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Mark. We really do appreciate your time. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, we would really appreciate if you could like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message. If you guys are listening to this in a Apple Podcast, Spotify, whatever podcast platform you're listening on. We would really appreciate if you could leave us a 5-star review and then drop a comment in the comment section and let us know what you think about these episodes and what you'd like to hear next. So thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you all next time.